My sister sent me a text that read, "Dad's cutting you off completely, no more apartment money. Figure it out yourself." Then she added a laughing emoji. 3 days later, I got a call from a lawyer I'd never heard of. "Miss Rodriguez, we need to discuss your uncle's estate immediately." This is Sarah Rodriguez, and last month my world turned completely upside down. I'd been struggling to finish my art degree at Portland State while working part-time at a coffee shop. My controlling father had been threatening to cut off my rent money for months because he disapproved of my worthless art major. But nothing could have prepared me for that text from my sister Emma, or the phone call that followed 3 days later. Growing up in Bend, Oregon, our family looked perfect from the outside. My father, Marcus Rodriguez, was a successful real estate developer who owned half the commercial properties downtown. My mother, Linda, was a former beauty queen who now ran charity galas and sat on the hospital board. Our sprawling ranch house overlooked the Cascade Mountains, complete with a circular driveway and manicured gardens that appeared in the local lifestyle magazine every spring. But inside those walls, perfection was mandatory and deviation was punishable. From my earliest memories, my father orchestrated every aspect of our lives with military precision. Emma, my younger sister by 3 years, took ballet, piano and French lessons. I was enrolled in junior business camps, youth leadership programs and academic enrichment courses every summer. "Rodriguez children don't waste time," my father would announce whenever we complained about our packed schedules. My mother, though gentler in her approach, was equally invested in maintaining our family's image. She monitored our social media posts, approved our friend groups, and ensured we always appeared polished and accomplished. "What will people think?" was her constant refrain whenever we stepped out of line. Emma adapted perfectly to this environment. She learned early that compliance brought rewards, designer clothes, a new car at 16, and endless praise for being the perfect daughter. She studied business administration, dated boys from approved families, and planned to join my father's company after graduation. Emma was everything our parents wanted in a daughter. I, however, questioned everything from the beginning. Why couldn't I choose my own extracurricular activities? Why did my college major matter more than my happiness? Why were my parents more concerned with appearances than with who I actually was as a person? These questions earned me labels like difficult, ungrateful, and rebellious throughout my childhood. The first major battle came during my junior year of high school when I announced I wanted to take art classes instead of advanced business studies. My father's reaction was swift and decisive. "Rodriguez children don't become starving artists," he declared, immediately enrolling me in additional accounting courses. When I secretly continued drawing in my spare time, my mother confiscated my art supplies. "Focus on your real future," she insisted. By my senior year, the tension in our house was unbearable. My parents had mapped out my entire life. Business degree at University of Oregon, internship at my father's company, eventual partnership in the family business. When I suggested exploring art schools, my father threatened to disown me entirely. "Not one penny of my money will go toward your ridiculous fantasies," he announced at dinner, slamming his fist on the table. Emma, always the peacemaker, tried to convince me to go along with their plan. "Just get the business degree first," she suggested during one of our late-night conversations. "You can always do art as a hobby later." But I knew that later would never come. My parents' control was absolute, and they had no intention of loosening their grip. The compromise we reached was precarious at best. I could attend Portland State for their business program, and my father would pay for my apartment and basic expenses. In exchange, I had to maintain a 3.5 GPA, call home twice weekly, and submit to regular check-ins about my progress toward business internships. What my parents didn't know was that I was also taking art classes under the guise of electives and slowly building a portfolio. For 2 years, I walked this tightrope, officially studying business while secretly pursuing my passion for painting and sculpture. I lived in a tiny studio apartment near campus that my father's monthly payments barely covered, supplementing with shifts at Common Grounds Coffee to afford art supplies and actual food. The deception was exhausting, but it was the only way I could pursue my dreams while maintaining family support. Everything started unraveling during my junior year when I decided to enter a regional art competition. My painting, a vibrant landscape inspired by the Oregon coast, won second place and was featured in the local newspaper. Unfortunately, someone from Bend saw the article and mentioned it to my mother at a charity luncheon. The phone call came that evening. "Sarah Michelle Rodriguez," my mother's voice was ice cold when she said my full name. "Explain to me why I'm hearing about your art career from strangers at lunch." I tried to downplay it, calling it a hobby, a stress reliever from my demanding business coursework. But my parents weren't fooled. They demanded transcripts which revealed my actual course load: art history, studio practice, colour theory, and only 2 business classes per semester. "You've been lying to us for 2 years, my father's voice shook with rage during our video call. "We're funding your rebellion against everything we've tried to teach you." It's not rebellion, Dad. It's my passion. I'm good at this. You're good at wasting my money, he shot back. Consider this your final warning. Drop the art nonsense immediately or face the consequences. But I couldn't give up. Art wasn't just what I did. It was who I was. My professors encouraged me to apply for gallery showings. Fellow students collaborated with me on projects that felt meaningful and alive. For the first time in my life, I was exactly where I belonged. The breaking point came when I was offered a solo exhibition at a small gallery in Portland's Pearl District. It was a huge opportunity for a student, and I couldn't contain my excitement. I made the mistake of posting about it on Instagram, forgetting that Emma followed my account. Within hours, my phone was buzzing with calls from my parents. This time, there was no discussion, no negotiation. You have until the end of the month to withdraw from your art classes and commit fully to business, my father ultimated. Or we're done. Completely done. I tried to reason with them, explaining how important this opportunity was, how it could lead to future career prospects. But their minds were made up. In their view, I had betrayed their trust and embarrassed the family name. The fact that my art was gaining recognition only made it worse in their eyes, proving that I was serious about a future they considered unacceptable. Emma called me separately that night, her voice filled with a mixture of pity and frustration. Sarah, just give up the art thing. You're tearing the family apart. Mom's been crying for days and Dad's talking about changing his will. Is your hobby really worth all this drama? It's not a hobby, I tried to explain. This is my career, my calling. I can't just turn it off. Then you're being selfish, she replied, her words cutting deep. You're choosing strangers in some gallery over your own family. 2 weeks before my exhibition opening, I called home to try one more time to bridge the gap. I wanted to invite them to the gallery to show them my work and help them understand why art meant so much to me. The call went straight to voicemail. I left a long, heartfelt message explaining my feelings, my hopes for our relationship, and the details of the exhibition. No one called back. My solo exhibition opened on a rainy Thursday evening in October. The gallery was small but sophisticated, with white walls and perfect lighting that made my paintings glow. About 30 people attended, including my professors, fellow students, and a few local art collectors. For 2 hours, I watched strangers connect with my work, ask thoughtful questions, and genuinely appreciate what I'd created. 3 paintings sold that night. I was floating on cloud 9 when I got back to my apartment around 10 p.m. That's when I saw the text from Emma. Dad's cutting you off completely. No more apartment money. Figure it out yourself. Then she added a laughing emoji, as if my potential homelessness was amusing to her. The financial reality hit immediately. My coffee shop job barely covered groceries and art supplies. Without my father's monthly payment, I couldn't afford rent. I had exactly $437 in my checking account and 3 weeks until the next payment was due. I tried calling home repeatedly over the next 2 days, but every number went straight to voicemail. Emma ignored my text asking if the cutoff was permanent or just another manipulation tactic. I was completely shut out, both financially and emotionally. By day 3, panic was setting in. I was researching homeless shelters and considering dropping out of school entirely when my phone rang with an unknown Oregon number. Is this Sarah Rodriguez? The voice was professional, elderly, and unfamiliar. Yes, who's calling? This is attorney James Brennan from Brennan & Associates in Eugene. I need to discuss your Uncle Miguel's estate with you immediately. Can you come to my office tomorrow? I was confused. Uncle Miguel? I don't have an Uncle Miguel. There was a pause. Miss Rodriguez, Miguel Santos was your father's older brother. He passed away last month and left specific instructions regarding you. This is quite urgent. I'd never heard of any Uncle Miguel. My father had always claimed to be an only child, and our family tree discussions never included extended relatives. Are you sure you have the right Sarah Rodriguez? Born Sarah Michelle Rodriguez on April 15th, 2002, to Marcus Rodriguez and Linda Chen Rodriguez of Bend, Oregon? The specificity was unsettling. Yes, that's me. Then I absolutely have the right person. Can you be here tomorrow at 2 p.m? I can't discuss the details over the phone, but this matter affects your immediate future significantly. That night, I barely slept, my mind racing with questions. Who was this mysterious uncle? Why had my father never mentioned him? And why was a lawyer calling me specifically about his estate? I drove to Eugene the next morning in my battered Honda Civic, using gas money I couldn't really spare. Brennan & Associates occupied the top floor of a historic brick building downtown, with views of the Willamette River and professional reception areas that spoke of serious money. James Brennan was a distinguished man in his 70s, with silver hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. His office was lined with law books and family photos, creating an atmosphere that was formal but warm. Miss Rodriguez, thank you for coming so quickly, he began, gesturing to a leather chair across from his desk. I understand this must be confusing, but I need to share some important information about your family history. He opened a thick file folder. Miguel Santos was indeed your father's older brother. They had a falling out over 20 years ago, which is likely why you've never heard of him. What kind of falling out? Miguel was an artist, James explained, and I felt my heart skip. A very successful sculptor who built a considerable career and fortune through his work. Your father apparently disapproved of this career choice and felt Miguel was setting a bad example for the family. The irony was staggering. My father disowned his own brother for being an artist. According to Miguel, yes, they had a bitter argument when Miguel decided to pursue art full-time instead of joining your grandfather's construction business. Your father accused him of being selfish and irresponsible. Miguel felt your father was narrow-minded and controlling. They never spoke again. James pulled out a photograph and slid it across the desk. It showed a man who looked remarkably like my father, but with longer hair, paint-stained clothes, and a warm smile. Miguel built a beautiful home and studio in the mountains outside Eugene. He never married, never had children, but he followed your life from a distance. He followed my life? Through mutual friends, newspaper clippings, social media. He knew about your art, Sarah. In fact, he purchased one of your paintings from the gallery last week. My hands started shaking. He bought one of my paintings? James smiled. The coastal landscape. He was there opening night in the back of the room. He was incredibly proud of your work and your courage to pursue art despite your father's opposition. Tears filled my eyes as I thought about that mysterious buyer who'd paid for my son's painting. Why didn't he introduce himself? He wanted to, but he was battling pancreatic cancer and passed away just 2 days after your exhibition. In his final weeks, he contacted me to update his will specifically to include you. James handed me a legal document. Miguel left you his entire estate, Miss Rodriguez. His home, his studio, his artwork collection, and his financial assets. The total value is approximately $2.8 million. The room seemed to spin around me. That's impossible. He didn't even know me. He knew enough. Miguel recognized a kindred spirit facing the same family pressures he had experienced. His will includes a personal letter for you. With trembling hands, I opened the sealed envelope James provided. Dear Sarah, if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and you've learned about your secret uncle who believed in your dreams. I'm sorry we never met in person, but I've been watching your journey with great pride and growing concern. Your father and I are more alike than he'd care to admit. We're both stubborn, passionate, and absolutely convinced we know what's best. The difference is that I learned to channel that intensity into creating beauty, while he uses it to control others. 23 years ago, I made the same choice you're making now. I walked away from family expectations to pursue art, and it cost me my relationship with your father. But Sarah, it was the best decision I ever made. Art gave me purpose, joy, financial success, and a life filled with meaning. Your father sees art as frivolous because he's never understood that creativity requires the same discipline, business sense, and hard work as any other career. You're proving him wrong with every brush stroke, every exhibition, every sale. This inheritance isn't charity. It's an investment in your future and a bridge to your independence. Use it wisely, pursue your passion fearlessly, and never let anyone convince you that your dreams are too small or too big. I wish I could have been there to support you in person, but I hope this gift can provide the freedom I never had when I was starting out. With love and artistic solidarity, Uncle Miguel P.S. Your sunset painting hangs in my living room where it catches the morning light beautifully. You have real talent, Sarah. Trust it. I was crying openly now, overwhelmed by the connection to an uncle I'd never known and the incredible generosity of his final act. What happens now? James outlined the process. The house and studio were mine immediately, along with access to a substantial bank account for expenses. Miguel's art collection, worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, would be appraised and transferred. There were some legal formalities, but I could move into the property within a week. There's one more thing, James added. Miguel included a provision that his estate should remain confidential unless you choose to disclose it. He suspected your father might try to interfere or claim some rights to the inheritance. As I drove back to Portland that afternoon, my mind was reeling. In one day, I'd gone from facing homelessness to inheriting enough money to never worry about basic needs again. More than that, I discovered a family member who understood my struggles and believed in my dreams. But the most profound realization was that my father had disowned his own brother for making the exact same choice I was making. His hatred of my art career wasn't just about practicality or family image. It was about his own guilt over losing Miguel. That evening, I walked through my tiny apartment, looking at my paintings and art supplies with new eyes. Tomorrow, I would have to decide whether to tell my family about Uncle Miguel, or let them continue believing I was struggling and alone. For the first time in my life, I held all the power in our relationship. The question was what I would do with it. I called the gallery first to share the incredible news that my mysterious buyer had been my uncle. The gallery director was fascinated by the story and immediately suggested a memorial exhibition featuring both Miguel's and my work. Artistic legacy across generations, she said excitedly. It would be a beautiful tribute. Next, I drove to Eugene to see my inheritance. Miguel's house was a stunning modern design built into a hillside, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a valley dotted with oak trees. The studio was a converted barn with north-facing skylights and canvases everywhere. Some finished, others barely started. Walking through his workspace, I felt an immediate connection to this uncle I'd never met. His style was different from mine. He worked primarily in sculpture while I painted, but his dedication to craft was evident in every tool, every piece of reference material, every carefully organised workspace. In his bedroom, I found a scrapbook filled with articles about me. Every newspaper mention, every school art show, even screenshots of my Instagram posts. On the nightstand was a framed photo of my sunset painting, alongside pictures of his own work. He really had been following my journey. The refrigerator was covered with gallery announcements, artist opportunities, and exhibition calls. Even in his final months, Miguel had been thinking about the art world and planning future projects. It was both heartbreaking and inspiring. I spent 3 days at the house exploring every room, reading through Miguel's journals, and trying to understand the man who had changed my life, posthumously. His writing revealed someone who'd struggled with the same family pressures but had found peace through art and solitude. Marcus called today to check in, read one entry from 5 years ago. Really, he wanted to know if I was still wasting my life on sculpture. When I told him about my gallery representation in San Francisco, he hung up. I used to hope we'd reconcile someday, but I think he's too proud to admit that maybe artists can be successful too. Another entry from last year was particularly poignant. Saw Sarah's painting online. She has real talent, but more importantly, she has courage. Marcus is trying to crush the same spirit in her that he couldn't tolerate in me. I need to make sure she has options when the inevitable break comes. Reading his words, I realised Miguel had orchestrated this inheritance, not as a random act of kindness, but as a strategic intervention. He'd seen the pattern repeating with me and taken steps to ensure I'd have the support he'd never had. On my 4th day at the house, I decided it was time to contact my family, not to ask for their approval or forgiveness, but to set new boundaries from a position of strength. I started with Emma, sending a simple text. "We need to talk. Can you call me?" She responded within minutes. "Sarah, I've been worried about you. Have you figured out your money situation? Dad says you can come home anytime if you're ready to be reasonable about your major. Actually, that's what I wanted to discuss. Are Mom and Dad available for a video call tonight? They're pretty angry with you still, but I can ask. Why? I have news about our family that they need to hear." That evening, my parents' faces appeared on my laptop screen, both looking stern and disapproving. Emma was also on the call, clearly curious about my mysterious news. "Sarah," my father began immediately, "I hope you've called to apologise for your behaviour and discuss returning to business school where you belong." "Actually, Dad, I called to tell you about Uncle Miguel." The silence that followed was deafening. My father's face went completely pale, while my mother looked confused. "I don't know what you're talking about," my father said finally, but his voice lacked conviction. "Miguel Santos, your older brother, the artist you disowned 20 years ago for making the same choices I'm making now." Emma gasped. "What? Dad, you have a brother?" My mother was staring at my father with dawning realization. "Marcus, is this about Miguel, the one you told me died years ago?" "He did die," my father said quietly, "last month, and he left me his entire estate because he understood what you've never been able to understand, that art is a legitimate career, not a hobby." For several long moments no one spoke. Finally my father found his voice, but it was defeated, not angry. "How much?" "Enough that I'll never need to ask you for money again. Enough to pursue my art without worrying about rent or groceries. Enough to be independent." My mother was crying now. "Marcus, how could you tell me your brother was dead? How could you keep this secret for 20 years? "Because he embarrassed the family," my father snapped, some of his old fire returning. "Because he chose selfishness over responsibility, just like Sarah's doing now. He chose to follow his passion, and it made him wealthy and successful," I countered. "He created beautiful work that brought joy to thousands of people. How is that selfish?" Emma was looking back and forth between us like she was watching a tennis match. "I can't believe you lied about having a brother. What else haven't you told us?" My father's composure finally cracked. "Miguel abandoned his family responsibilities to play with clay and metal. When our father needed help with the construction business, Miguel walked away to pursue his artistic fantasies. I've spent my entire life building what he threw away. And now you're trying to force me to repeat your life instead of learning from Miguel's example," I said. "But the difference is, I have choices now. I can support myself through my art." "With money you didn't earn," my father said bitterly. "With money I inherited from someone who believed in me," I corrected. Someone who understood that talent and passion deserve support, not sabotage. My mother was still processing the revelation about Miguel. Marcus, I need to understand this. You told me your brother died in an accident when we first started dating. You've maintained that lie for over 20 years. I told you he was dead to me, my father said defensively, which was true. No, you told me he died in a car accident. I've been sending sympathy cards to his widow for 2 decades. The scope of my father's deception was becoming clear even to Emma, who had always defended his actions. Dad, this is messed up. You've been lying to all of us. I protected this family from his influence, my father insisted. I kept his irresponsible choices from affecting our children. You kept us from knowing we had an uncle who might have loved and supported us, I said. You robbed us of a relationship because it threatened your control. The conversation continued for another hour, with revelations and accusations flying from all sides. But the fundamental dynamic had shifted. I was no longer the desperate daughter begging for approval and support. I was an independent adult with options, sharing information rather than seeking permission. When we finally ended the call, nothing was resolved. But everything had changed. My father couldn't threaten my financial security anymore. My mother was questioning decades of assumptions about their marriage. And Emma was beginning to see the controlling patterns she'd always accepted as normal. Over the following weeks, I settled into my new life at Miguel's house. I converted one of the spare bedrooms into a painting studio, taking advantage of the incredible mountain views and natural light. The peace and solitude were exactly what I needed to process everything that had happened and plan my future. The gallery director contacted me about the memorial exhibition she'd proposed, and I agreed enthusiastically. Working with Miguel's pieces, I felt a deep connection to his artistic vision and personal struggles. Our work complemented each other beautifully, telling a story of artistic persistence across generations. Emma visited me twice during this period, clearly struggling with the family revelations. I don't know what to believe anymore, she confessed during her second visit. If Dad lied about Uncle Miguel, what else has he lied about? She was beginning to question her own life choices for the first time, wondering if her business major was really her passion or just another form of family compliance. I used to think you were being stubborn and selfish, she admitted. But seeing this house, reading Miguel's journals, understanding what you've been fighting for, maybe I was wrong. My parents, meanwhile, were dealing with the fallout of my father's decades-long deception. My mother called me one evening, her voice shaking. Sarah, I need to apologize. I had no idea about Miguel, about your father's family history. Some of his reactions to your art make more sense now, but that doesn't excuse how we've treated you. What are you going to do? I asked. I don't know yet. Your father and I are in counselling, trying to work through the lies and the patterns. But I want you to know that I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself, even when it was difficult. It wasn't a complete reconciliation, but it was a beginning. The memorial exhibition opened on a sunny Saturday in February, 6 months after my original solo show. The gallery was packed with art lovers, Miguel's old friends, and members of my family who had never seen my work before. My mother and Emma both attended, though my father stayed home. Watching them look at my paintings with genuine interest and appreciation was emotional beyond anything I'd expected. This one reminds me of our trip to Cannon Beach when you were 12, my mother said, studying a seascape I'd painted after moving to Miguel's house. You sat on the rocks for hours, watching the waves change colour. I still do that, I told her. It's where some of my best ideas come from. She nodded thoughtfully. I should have paid more attention to what made you happy instead of what I thought would make you successful. Emma surprised me by purchasing one of my smaller paintings. I want it for my apartment, she said. Something to remind me that there are different ways to live. As the evening wound down, James Brennan approached me with a familiar envelope. Miguel left this with instructions to give it to you after your first exhibition in his memory. The second letter was shorter, but equally moving. Sarah, if you're reading this, then you've had time to settle into your new life and understand what I'm trying to give you. Not just money or property, but freedom to choose your own path. By now you've probably realised that your father's opposition to your art comes from his own pain about our broken relationship. I hope someday he can work through that guilt and reconnect with both of us. But don't wait for his approval to live your life. Create boldly, love deeply, and trust your instincts. You have everything you need to build an extraordinary life. Your proud Uncle Miguel. P.S. Check the studio shed behind the house. There's one more surprise waiting. The next morning I explored the shed Miguel had mentioned. Hidden under a tarp was a sculpture I hadn't noticed before. A bronze piece showing 2 figures reaching toward each other across a divide, their fingertips almost touching. A small plaque at the base read, "For Marcus and Sarah, may you find each other again." Even after death, Miguel was still trying to heal our family. A year later, my life looked completely different from anything I'd imagined as a struggling student. I was represented by 2 galleries, had completed several commissioned pieces, and was planning my first solo museum exhibition. More importantly, I was happy in a way that felt authentic and sustainable. My relationship with my family was slowly improving. My father and I maintained a careful distance, but we were speaking again. He'd even visited Miguel's grave with me, a painful but necessary step toward understanding the brother he'd lost. Emma had made her own changes, switching to art history and discovering a passion for museum curation. Turns out I love art too, she told me with a smile. I just needed permission to explore it. My mother had become my biggest supporter, attending every exhibition and even commissioning a portrait of our family for their anniversary. I want to remember us as we could be, she explained, not as we were. The house in the mountains became my sanctuary, a place where I could create without judgment or interference. Miguel's presence was everywhere, in the organised art supplies, the carefully designed lighting, the inspiring views he'd chosen for his windows. Sometimes I still wondered what might have happened if I'd never learned about Uncle Miguel, if I'd given in to my father's demands and abandoned art entirely. The thought always made me grateful for the courage to stand firm in my truth, even when it seemed impossible. Miguel had given me more than financial security or a beautiful home. He'd given me proof that artistic dreams could flourish despite family opposition, that independence was possible, and that sometimes the family members who understand us best are the ones we've never met. As I painted in my studio each morning, watching the sunrise illuminate the mountains, I felt Miguel's spirit encouraging me forward. His sacrifice, losing his relationship with my father to pursue his dreams, had made my freedom possible. I was living the life he'd always wanted for me, and for both of us, that was enough. TLDR, my controlling father cut me off financially for pursuing art over business. Then I discovered he had a secret brother who was also an artist and who left me his entire $2.8 million estate. Turns out my father had disowned his own brother 20 years ago for making the same choices I was making. Now I'm financially independent, my art career is thriving, and my family is slowly learning to respect my decisions. Have you ever had to choose between family approval and following your dreams? Share your stories in the comments below.